In 2012, the Horn of Africa experienced intense rainfall which led to flooding on a massive scale. The past decade has yielded significant rainfall in this part of the African continent. East Africa, although subject to harsh droughts, can be significantly affected by downpours which are further compounded by the region's lack of infrastructure and low level of development. In 2006, an estimated 1.5 to 1.8 million people were affected in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Somalia. Ethiopia has been particularly affected by these deadly flooding events. In East Africa, the warm sea surface temperature of the western Indian Ocean starting during the last decade has led to wetter than average rainfall in the Horn of Africa, with incredibly destructive flooding in Ethiopia. In 2007, remote areas in Ethiopia's Afar region were completely cut off due to river flooding, and approximately 17 people were reported dead. Similarly, nearly 7,000 people were displaced in both the Gambela and Afar regions of Ethiopia in 2013. When people are displaced and infrastructure is destroyed, it makes it nearly impossible for them to sell their goods in markets. Flooding destroys homes and ravages the crops these people depend on for both food and income. In many rural areas, coffee farming is very important, and even a single large-scale flooding event can damage the crop. Climate change is suspected to have a continuing impact on flooding. Furthermore, ongoing changes in climate seem to alter the otherwise predictable Indian Ocean monsoon current. Intense rainfall events can help alleviate areas that have been struck by drought. The areas that have been affected by droughts are responsible for a general loss of vegetation in the region. In turn, this loss of vegetation can destabilize the soil, which can lead to mudslides during periods of heavy rainfall. As a result, this unpredictable cycle of flooding and drought can lead to large-scale malnutrition and even famine. Flooding can also lead to water contamination, which can ultimately accelerate the spread of diseases such as cholera, malaria, measles, and diarrhea. This can further put pressure on local and regional governments and even overwhelm relief efforts on a national scale. Malnutrition can result in the compromise of natural immunity, leading to more frequent, severe, and prolonged episodes of infections. Additionally, severe malnutrition in Ethiopia often hides symptoms and signs of communicable diseases, which make clinical diagnosis and early treatment nearly impossible. Contamination can also be caused by dead animals, and upstream contamination can occur if water sources are interconnected. Flooding after heavy rains can also result in the overflow of sewage and widespread water contamination. Local climates can also heavily change how diseases affect a population. For example, hot, humid climates are especially conducive to the spread of disease. These factors, when combined with the population density in some areas, can be particularly disastrous. Additionally, recent evidence suggests that it is possible for pathogens to be spread from one community to another on air currents. Regional conflicts in East Africa have been worsened by flooding. Some Ethiopian refugee camps, which are home to thousands of refugees from South Sudan, have been made uninhabitable by flooding. The United Nations estimates that almost 180,000 refugees have arrived in Ethiopia from South Sudan since violence broke out in 2013. This flood of refugees from South Sudan places an enormous strain on Ethiopia's infrastructure. Camps located in Ethiopia's Gambela region have already begun to be hugely affected by regional flooding. Likewise, the population displacement and densely populated environmental refugee areas may cause disease to spread more rapidly. For example, the risk of transmission of dengue and yellow fever is increased among people living in inadequate shelters or in overcrowded conditions, especially in places where fresh water is stored in unprotected water containers and rainfall gathers in other artificial containers, providing mosquito larvae with a place to proliferate. Relieving the disaster caused by these flooding events will require the help of the international community. Coordinated disaster prevention efforts should focus on educating people about the risks associated with living in a disaster-prone region.